Eerie towns, disappearing diners, and creepy gas stations. What's your unexplained story of being in a place that shouldn't exist? Many years ago, myself and two of my best friends decided to go for a day of mountain biking at Snowshoe in southern West Virginia. Now, this was way before the days of GPS, so we were kinda doing this by some half-butted directions and an old map. But the point is, we got lost. Sometime along the way, we ended up in a very tiny little town, and we figured we would ask for directions. It was absolutely deserted. I'm talking not a single soul to be seen anywhere. We parked the truck and split up looking for anyone. Now, this was around 9 to 10 a.m., so not exactly the crack of dawn, mind you. We went to the post office, nobody. We went to the only bar in town, which was unlocked, unattended with music playing, but not a single soul. We went business to business to business and walked the streets, and after about 25 minutes, we finally found one old guy who just seemed to appear out of nowhere in the middle of town walking alone. The first question we asked him wasn't even for directions, it was, "Where the heck is everyone?" To which he replied, "Well, I guess folks around here don't get up much till around noon." We asked him for directions to Snowshoe, and he pointed to the road we came in on and said, "Go that way about 10 miles and make a right, and we'll find the interstate." We left quickly. We all had a very bad sense of unease about the whole thing. As we left, we were about 5 miles down the road and hit a lady dressed up in a state road uniform standing in the middle of a very long straightaway holding up a stop sign. When we approached her, she turned the sign from slow to stop. We asked what was going on. She stated that there was road construction ahead. We told her of what just happened, and she kind of laughed and said, "Those people in that town are kind of strange, but let it slide." So we actually started talking to her, waiting for the line of traffic to come by from the opposite direction. We actually ended up talking to her for about 45 minutes, just shooting the crap. Kinda got lost in the convo. Not one single vehicle ever approached from the other direction or behind us. Eventually she said, "Well, I guess it's clear now and you can go ahead," and slowly turned the sign from stop to slow and motioned for us to go ahead. We went straight ahead, the only direction you could possibly go for the next 30 some odd miles, and we did not see any signs of construction, state road workers, or maintenance going on at all. She had no vehicle. We figured she was a flag woman dropped off by some crew up ahead. After the encounter with the town and this woman, we had enough and called it quits. We turned on the interstate as soon as we found it and headed north and home. Every single one of us still remembers this whole encounter in vivid detail to this day. I asked my friend about it actually 3 months ago at his wedding, and it still freaks him out to no end. When my brother and I were 10 and 12 respectively, our family went on a hike through the cemetery and into the woods not far from our home. My brothers and I would explore these woods every day, even camped in them before. We knew it like the back of our hands. Anyways, as the family hits our usual spot by the creek halfway through, Brother 1 and I said we'd be back in a few. We wanted to wander off further up the creek, so we did. We came across a very large hill we've seen before. It was littered with what looks like someone's worldly possessions. As if they turned a house upside down, shook out the contents, took the house and left. There were tons of painted X's on the trees, showing someone intended to cut them down at some point. We poked around for a few when we thought we heard our mom hollering at us. So we turned tail and walked maybe 20 feet back down the hill to where our parents were. The entire encounter was maybe 45 minutes long on our end. As soon as our mom saw us, we got the beating of a lifetime. We'd actually been gone almost 4 hours. She never saw us walk up any hill and remembered seeing us meandering down the straight path by the creek, not turning up a hill that was 20 feet away. She and her husband and our other brother combed the woods for 4 hours, screaming our names, and could not find nor tell of us. We pleaded our case and even tried showing her the hill. Surely she was messing with us. So we stomped up to turn off for the hill and it was gone. Nowhere to be seen. For years we explored the woods determined to find that damn hill. We covered miles and miles of path woods. As we got older, we even mapped it out. To this day, the hill does not exist. We never found it again. Never found the weird furniture, toys, clothes, and other household items that were scattered across the hill. And never met anyone in this area that had a clue about the hill. We probably just wandered further than we meant to, but I always found it weird that we never found that hill again. This took place when I was 13. No one in my family will acknowledge it happened. The only one who would cave to my great-grandpa have unfortunately passed away. No one will give me the time of day about it. My family has a cabin in Cook's Forest, Clarion, Pennsylvania. Cabin was built by my great-granddad, and he expanded a bit over the years, but had a nice little nook at the bottom of a long dirt road off the main road and down a hill. There were few other properties around, but most are up and off the dirt road. Only one is down the hill, and only halfway at that. It's not modern by any means. No internet, cell service. The TV still has dials you have to twist to get to watch a DVD. It's very rustic, and I love it. The property halfway down the hill is visible from any part at the front of our cabin, which is where the kitchen window, parking porch, and fire pit are. For as long as anyone can remember, it's been abandoned. That had what was once a cabin with a concrete basement. The cabin was built on a hill, so half the basement stuck out from the hill, but the remaining part was crumbling. It also was the fork where we would ride our ATVs to get to the fire break, so even though it could have been creepy, it was a very common and familiar sight. Until one Memorial Day, which is when we opened the cabin after the winter, and a large part of our family would go to the cabin for the long weekend to spend time together. Everyone would usually get there, though, in the early evening, and then all come together for my great-granddad's dinosaur pancakes for breakfast, the highlight of my single-digit to preteen years. So, I wake up, expecting to smell pancakes and hear chatter from the older members of my family in the kitchen. But nothing. I assume I've gotten up too early, go downstairs to use the bathroom, and then go back to sleep. Looking back, the whole upstairs was just mattresses with an aisle between them. I should have noticed most of the beds were empty. I get downstairs and see all the adults outside. I go out to say good morning and demand my T-Rex pancakes. I walk out and see all my family adults in kind of a semicircle, facing an older man and woman I did not recognize. I assume this is some adult situation, so I go back inside to wake up my cousins, but not before looking at the clock on the microwave and seeing it's 3 p.m. Now, I love the cabin. I doodled the cabin itself, four-wheelers, and the area around it for months leading up to Memorial Day weekend. I was usually up at the crack of dawn because I was so excited just to be there. Sleeping until 3 p.m. was not in any way normal. I wake up my cousins by the time they all mosey downstairs. The adults are back inside. Everyone's pretty silent, but then great-grandpa fires up the stove and gets us kids excited for dino cakes. All seems normal. I was there with one of my aunts and uncles, no parents, and my aunt's pretty close in age to me and was for sure the cool aunt. So, when I saw her pale as a sheet, I went to ask what's wrong. She took me outside and pointed at the aforementioned abandoned and crumbling property. In its place was a sprawling cabin mansion, parking area full of SUVs, and the coolest looking four-wheelers my 13-year-old self has ever seen. Aunt tells me that the owners had come to say hi, the couple I saw earlier, and invited us to hang out with their niece and nephews as they were having a Memorial Day get-together just like us. Me, having zero thought besides awesome four-wheelers, almost ran to the house, but my aunt caught me and rather forcefully reminded me of my dino cakes. I conceded and ran back inside to an atmospheric so thick with tension that even my undeveloped brain could detect it. The oldest of the adults were acting normal and playing around with us kids, but something was very off. I finally asked what the heck is up, and my aunt bonked me in the head and asked if I'd seen the massive cabin mansion last night, last year, the year before. We'd come to the cabin every few weeks until December. Did I see any construction? Well, no. But they invited us over and they have a cool four-wheelers, Aunt Beth, come on. A resounding no from multiple family members made my emotional girl self almost flee and cry. Until my grampy, a 6'7" hulk of a man, got down to my level and explained that he felt there was something weird going on. He said the couple did not act right. I assumed they meant they were rude and that we should just keep ourselves this weekend. I agreed, and we went about our day, all adults keeping us occupied with activities either inside or behind the cabin. We get ready for bed when I see my great-granddad, World War II veteran who had the only bedroom on the first floor. He was loading 3 shotguns, handing one to my grampy and the other to my uncle. To my shock and awe, my granny pulls out a bedazzled Glock from her purse. I go to bed with images of my little granny taking down a bunch of bad guys with her shiny pistol. I wake up the next day to the smell of pancakes and the sound of adults chatting downstairs. I'm sad because today is when we would have had to pack and leave, but things seem to be back to normal, so I'm very glad. I run downstairs, note, the clock says 7:30, but ignore the weirdness and sit in front of a plate of dino cakes that I dig into, while asking my aunt what time we have to leave. Leave? We don't leave until tomorrow. Wait, what day is it? It's Saturday, we just got here last night. I notice just a bit of doubt in my aunt's eyes that I know something is up. I run outside. The abandoned lot is back to its decrepit state. I resolve to brush it off and enjoy my ATV riding and forget about everything pretty quickly. It wasn't until I got back to school and was called to the main office where they asked why I wasn't at school on Monday. I told them today was Monday. What are you talking about? No, it's Tuesday and my absence was unexplained despite several calls. Calling my parents and neither of which were at the cabin. So either my family played the trick of all tricks on me, or I'm living in an alternate universe where I can sleep into the afternoon, like I said. No one will even remotely entertain a conversation about this incident. I'm left telling my fellow people about my family's conspiracy against me. This story takes place in the mid-90s, a time before widely used cell phones and GPS. My 2 best friends and I, freshly able to drive, decided we would head out on a Saturday to a water park in southern Missouri, about a 3-hour drive from our hometown in northwest Arkansas. We've never been before and just used road maps to get there. We had a pretty fantastic time, but as the sun started to reach the tree line, we thought we ought to head home. It's about 7 o'clock and we miss a turn by my friend Paul, who was navigating. He said not to worry, another turn was coming up and we would get us there just as fast. The next turn took us from a detour to completely lost. By 8 o'clock, we're on roads that seem to be lacking in informative road signs and zero lights. We finally see a gas station and are relieved to get some directions as well as some gas. My friend Taylor and I go inside while Paul's pumping the gas. We come inside and a very friendly old man in his early 60s, who gives us a very large grin and says, "Well, hello there." It was very Foghorn Leghorn-esque. Looked like an extreme hillbilly, but very pleasant. We explained that we were in the need of gas and wanted to fill up. He explained that he was about to shut down for the night, but would be happy to oblige us. He did said something I'll never forget. "You have to make haste, though. Tonight is buffer night." Taylor and I looked at each other and shared an awkward look. We asked him if he could point out the location on our road map. While he was finding it, 2 people entered the shop from the back and called out for the old man. He said he was up front. The 2 approached us, a man and a woman, and at first looked confused, then, as though hit with an epiphany, they smiled. They asked the old man, "Are these the guests tonight?" He shot them a look and said, "No, these are some lost children." The way he said children caused the hairs on my neck to stand up. Not sure why. They looked at us and said, "The three of you should make haste because tonight is buffer night." Two things scared the crap out of me right then. The first being, how did they know about Paul pumping gas out front when they came in from the back? And second being that they repeated the old man verbatim. We clarified the directions to get back on a main highway and paid for the gas without waiting for change. Taylor and I booked it out of the gas station to find Paul already in the passenger seat. When we got in the car, we were nearly airborne from the speed we took off. Before we could say anything, Paul told us about how three men from across the street stood there, under a tree, just watching him. He waved, but they did not move a muscle. We just drove as fast as we could until we got back to the highway. To this day, I'll still have a nightmare every so often about that gas station and what my imagination has twisted buffer night into being. Was driving through Illinois to get to Chicago about a decade ago with a group of friends, and we stopped at a Taco Bell. The first thing we noticed was the workers were acting very odd. Everything they said was monotone and rehearsed. After sitting in this fairly busy restaurant for a bit, we kind of all just looked at each other at the same time, as we realized that none of the conversations happening around us made any sense. The people were speaking, and it was English, but the sentences weren't logical. They were just saying words at each other. The best I can remember about weird conversations was that they were stringing several prepositions in a row with no real sentence structure. Forced laughter and nodding, stuff like that. Like they were mimicking how humans talk. Think of those, quote, "what English sounds like to a non-speaker" videos you see on YouTube. But everybody was doing it all around us. We didn't say much about it until we got outside, at which point we all freaked out and confirmed each other's experience at once. We got the duck out of there. We jokingly refer to this place as the NPC Training Center, since the people did not seem to be real, or they were learning how to be human or something. Still freaks me out. In the 7th grade, I had a friend that lived near a beach on a bay, Lake Michigan. One day in early May, it reached 70 degrees, nearly unheard of for the time of year in northern Wisconsin. My two friends, including the beach friend, excitedly rode our bikes down to the beach to maybe dip our toes in, expecting still frigid waters and then tan for the rest of the afternoon. The water, though, surprisingly warm, like bathwater warm. In this particular area of the bay, the water was shallow for about a half-mile out. We were joyously splashing around, wading deeper and deeper until we were about chest deep. As we dunked each other and swam with abandon, I started to feel sick. Bad headache, nausea, wobbly. Just then, my other two friends mentioned that they also felt sick. We headed back to shore, nearly crawling by the time we got out. The three of us collapsed under a tree and fell asleep for 2 hours. When we woke up, we talked about how weird it was. I dipped my toes back in the water and it was freezing cold. To this day, I have no idea what was in there. I do know that there's a chemical plant in town that used to manufacture things like Agent Orange, and that their practices were known to be less than environmentally conscious. I've never touched that water since. The story starts about 15 years ago, and it was during the summer when about 6 of my cousins decided to come and spend the night. We were playing in the woods and our ages ranged between 9 to 15. Although that is pretty large swing, it was because of our little brothers and one of the cousins. The rest of us were 12 to 15. The day started normal and we were walking through the woods looking for cool stuff. There were Pepsi bottles and cans from the 70s and other trash, and then we came to the pond that's on the lake. Now, the pond's not that far from our house. It's maybe a quarter-mile in and very easy to find. It had a hill that went up, and since the last time I went there, we saw there was a trailer house parked in the middle of the woods. This is impossible to put there. These are Texas woods with vines, bushes, spider webs, and all sorts of things to make it way too hard to drive in. Not only that it looked really old and run down, like it'd been there for a very, very long time, which was simply not possible, and we decided to go and investigate. We go up, and the first thing we see is a large clearing with a campfire that was recently used. The clearing was free of trees, trash, and has been raked of the leaves. It was large enough that you could fit maybe 20 chairs evenly spaced around in front of the trailer. The second thing we noticed was a large cross turned upside down and leaning on the trailer. There were also smaller upside-down crosses nailed into the trees around the clearing. Some of the cousins wanted to see inside the trailer, but the oldest, 15, told us absolutely not. He was a lot larger than us and played high school football. The rest of us were in middle school, so we listened and left. We told my dad, and he went with my uncle. Both of them were armed and went to see what was going on in the woods really close to the house. They could not find it, and we went back the next day and everything was gone. When I meant everything, I mean there were now trees where we saw the clearing, fully grown. My cousin and I still talk about it, and there have been 3 trips to go find it over the years, and have come up empty-handed. We lived in a haunted house, and the woods would have activity at night as well. You can go to my profile and read some of the things that happened, and we thought it was just another haunted event due to the background of the house we lived in. House was burned down by a local witch who sold it to my dad very cheaply because they proved it was her fault. Some people told my dad that the house caught fire during one of her rituals, and she ran out of the house with cigarette burns all over her body that day.